Live on YouTube. Hi, good morning. Says Mr. Manish Kondhalkar. Good morning, Mr. Kondhalkar. Just going live on YouTube. Sorry, LinkedIn. Yeah, I think I'm live on LinkedIn. I just need to send this message to people on WhatsApp and then we will begin the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. The show that makes everything worth it. The show of all shows. 204th episode. Weekly mental workout. Good. Sent. Sent to people on WhatsApp. Sent to people on LinkedIn. And I'm live on YouTube, which means we're ready to go. Beautiful. Beautiful. I guess you can hear me. If you can hear me, you can give me a cheer and then we will begin. Mr. Kondhalkar. Right? We should be good, right? We should be good. Perfect. Perfect. Sounds good. Sounds good. So, one second. Yeah, thank God somebody took care of it. So let's begin. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our weekly mental workout, a weekly dose of insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, you gotta follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tankard, chalice, or stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Wonderful. Delicious. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together, which is such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin with our analysis. So we saw what happened last week, a lot of rigmarole geopolitically, which led to a lot of things financially, right? The week began and Greenland crisis, or let's say controversy, if not a crisis, erupted, where it became a direct standoff between US and Europe. Like troops started mounting on Greenland, the European NATO forces started aligning themselves, and US essentially said that they were going to take over Greenland, uh, which was very, very weird. Now that situation escalated, and around Wednesday or Thursday was it? The entire project, like Indian markets fell, Asian markets fell, or the emerging markets fell, and they just went down. And as they went down, gold and silver went up, right? Which was so predictable. Which was so predictable. So while it was happening, I was like, I wish I was doing the daily thinkers frequency session, that would have been a nice thing to discuss. Now this is what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. But even with our weekly outlook, we knew what was going to happen as the geopolitical crisis erupted, right? We knew that the markets were going to tank, and we knew as the markets tanked, gold and silver are going to be up, right? Gold and silver, essentially gold, silver is an afterthought, but gold is a hedge against the global financial stability, instability. As global financial markets stumble, as geopolitical stability goes in doldrums, that's when gold rises, and that's exactly what happened, very predictably so, right? And then silver also went up. And while that was happening, the very next day or so, uh, Trump came along and said, if you're gonna help us, if you're gonna be nice about Greenland, which is just a block of ice, if you're gonna help us take it over, we'll be grateful. Otherwise, we'll remember. So that essentially meant that US was taking a step back in its conquest, so to speak, of Greenland. As that happened, right, markets started going up and gold started going down. I mean, slightly. Gold and silver. Silver ETFs, by the way, went down by like 16%, 20%, although SLV hasn't budged as much. But silver markets essentially, went down. So this is very, very predictable, and this lies in, uh, straight correlation with how we've been analyzing the market. So if you've been a regular viewer of Thinkers Frequency, you know how markets react, at least to geopolitical instability and, overall rigmarole. Now that happened, Davos summit, Davos, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that summit is on, you know, and all those people are bullshitting about what the global order is like. Nobody has a clue. But a very interesting thing, which is actually predictably going up at Davos. What do you think is going up? Now, this is a second order effect, right? A lot of people from all over the world, a lot of policymakers from India, a lot of businessmen from India, a lot of businessmen from all over the world, they're at Davos discussing the future of the world and the present of the world and so on and so forth. But what's actually happening on the ground when it comes to Davos? Do you have a clue? Well, I'll tell you. Actually, the prostitution. Hi, can you give some writing tips? Says Mr. Manish Kondhalkar. Right now, we're discussing something, but yeah, sure, I'll tell you. So, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, Davos. You know what's actually happening on the ground at Davos is prostitution. So the prostitution market at Davos is really heating up. So transactions are booming, right? In Switzerland, when it comes to uh, all these brothels and so on and so forth. So while while these people discuss the future of the world, right? The present is just a little more prostitution in Davos. Actually, a lot more prostitution. So how does that sound? That should be very insightful, right? These are the second order effects of the world. So as the rich and famous of the world gather together, bullshitting around nothing, right? Actually, uh, uh, prostitutes make money, right? There's a song around it, right? I don't know. It's something like Cardi B or something. Whores in the house, something of that sort. I don't remember that song. Uh, but there's this African American lady who's sung this song. I don't know. Was it Anaconda? Was it? It was a very explicit song, but something. So, but the beauty is that Davos, for all the talk, it's prostitution, which is gaining. Yeah, so that's what's going on. Indian markets had some good and bad news, of course. When Reliance reports came out, Reliance fell, Indian markets fell, right? Indigo's reports came out, they had to pay like a 500 crore rupee fine, and Adani's reports came out. The profits went down, but revenues were up. Adani Green also came out with its revenue reports. A lot of revenues came out, and now let's come to Indian market specifically, now that we've given a macro view of all the prostitution that's happening around the world. Telcos, we discussed it, right? So we discussed how Vodafone was going to get an AGR waiver. The only way to save Vodafone was for Vodafone to get for was the government to forget its dues, right? Government is like a 48% shareholder in Vodafone, right? And India doesn't want to be a telco duopoly. That's going to be a very difficult market. That's going to be a very difficult situation for a market like India to manage, right? So India wanted Vodafone to survive, and the only way for Vodafone to survive is essentially government just forgetting all its dues. Vodafone has about 80,000 crore in dues, right? And now the government is basically giving them a larger period of debt payout and then forgetting some AGR dues. Now, as that happened, the natural consequence was what happens to Airtel and Tata. Now they came out with their lawyers saying that hey, this particular thing applies to us as well, right? If you're giving Vodafone those dues, we should be getting those as well. That's a totally fair ask. However, with Vodafone, there was this national security or whatever you can call it risk, and the courts had ordered the government to essentially forget about the dues, right? Now, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia has come out with a statement that telcos need the court nod to get a Vodafone like AGR waiver, AGR relief. Now, the question is, should courts be determining what happens as far as tax demands of companies are concerned, or the government is considered? Would it be prudent for companies to essentially go to the court when it comes to getting waivers that other companies in a similar situation is are getting? So that's a very complicated play. However, that's gonna work out because the government is gonna lose a lot of money if it essentially waives off the AGR dues of Airtel and Tata as well, because that's gonna run in tens of thousands of crores, if not more, around 10,000 crores, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what's happening with telco. Indigo Q3 numbers came out, right? Profit plummeted 75% as we talked about. Why? Because they had to pay a fine because of the whole December situation, right? Although the revenue grew still, right? The revenue was 23,471 crore as against 22,110 crores in FY25 Q3. Right now, FY26 Q3, it's basically slightly up. The profit is at around 2000, was 2,500 crores earlier. Now it's 549 crores. If everything was normalized, if everything was okay, the company would have been somewhere around the same ballpark, right? Somewhere around 2,000 crores. So not that green as last year, but still it would have been fine. That's the nature of the monopoly that is Indigo. Indigo paid just 22 crore fine for the disruption that happened in December, says Mr. Ankur Pandit. Well, according to the report, it says Indigo has incurred a one-time cost of 570 crore on compensations after cancelling more than 5,000 flights. So it's not just, I didn't say the government penalty. It's basically the one-time fee that these people have had to incur, Mr. Pandit, around all the waivers, all the compensations that they had to incur. Basically, they had to reimburse customers, right, with other things, and they also went out with vouchers, and they basically paid them. There were a lot of arrangements that they had to make because of that controversy, and that expense has been pointed out to be exactly 570 crores. Now that is what's going on, right? It also made an additional provision of 9,969 crore towards restructuring the salary structure in line with the new rule. Now, labor code reforms have led to all the IT companies posting a tepid response, right? Mr. Tushar Tiwari says, "What compensation I got just a 3,000 rupee voucher from Indigo. Well, maybe that led to the 570 crore loss. 969 have been made crore have been made in provisions for the new labor code. Now, new labor code provisions have hurt the IT companies' earnings. So, if you notice TCS, if you notice HCL, if you notice all of these companies which have come out with earnings, right? They've posted a very, very strong drop from when it comes to the profit lines, and all of that is essentially the new labor code, right? Not just IT services companies and Indigo. A major bump has happened when it comes to BFSI, banking, uh, and banking, finance, and insurance and all. Mr. Ankur Pandit says, got it, but 22 crores in fines is a pittance for debacle that played out. That's correct. That's correct. So the government has essentially, they really went out and they're out to hurt Indigo, and it came out. Now it's I don't know how it's gonna pan out or how the government is gonna manage it, but they were trying to start two airlines, right, as a response to the whole Indigo monopoly play. One was some uh, and some was one had a Hindi name, one had an Urdu name or whatever, and they were looking at coming out with that. So Babus were not happy, right? And if you remember, when the Indigo debacle played out, a lot of people were writing that it's the fault of the regulators that they haven't been able to curtail the menace, right? And they didn't see this coming. And I wrote that it's Indigo which is going to be responsible for it at the end of the day, because this particular ruling, the pilot rest norms, they had been going on for about 18 months, right? And these people didn't pay heed to it. Now they've gotten relaxation from the current norms, and then February 10th is the date when those norms exactly come back and kick in. So let's see how Indigo fares when it comes to the next month as far as service reliability is considered. But yeah, that happened, and a lot of people suffered, including our viewer, Mr. Tushar Tiwari, as he was coming back from Vietnam, I think. Yeah, a lot of my friends also suffered. So that's what's going on with uh, Indigo, right? There's a report which says China, Hong Kong are dominating Indian supply of chips, right? Imports rise in FY26 despite center's diversification efforts. People should not be surprised, least of all viewers of Thinkers Frequency. We've been talking about this for a very long time. However, what's to be noted is that when they say China and Hong Kong, so China is basically some 34%, Hong Kong is said to be somewhere around 18%. So more or less, these people have about 50% share, but the rest of it is coming from Vietnam, which is also, directly or indirectly affected by the China debacle. I'm not saying that they're a Chinese state, but are they not? So it's a very very complicated situation. The exact numbers I'll tell you. So that is 30% originated in China. Total shipments worth 5.78 billion. 18% came from Hong Kong, 3.67% billion. So 18 and 30, that's 48, roughly 50, as I told you. And the rest came, a lot of them came from United States, 1.3 billion, and Vietnam. So that is very weird. Sorry, Taiwan. I'm sorry, Taiwan, not Vietnam. Taiwan. And also, Vietnam hasn't been mentioned, but a lot of rerouting must have happened, and that must have been coming from Vietnam. So, this is the nature of Indian chip manufacturing play right now. And this is what the government is trying to solve for, right? With the whole ECMS, Electronics Component Manufacturing Scheme, the PLI, the DLI, everything. Now, the DLI is basically looking at getting some sort of incentives as an equity play. So, DLI was just like PLI performance, linked incentives. What is it? Uh, uh, DLI is design linked incentives. ELI is employment linked incentives. PLI, what was the full form of PLI, folks? Uh, production linked incentives. I was like, performance linked incentives. My company brain was kicking in. But yeah, so DLI was essentially like PLI. So, you're going to get reimbursed for all the things that you make. But now the government is wanting some sort of equity positions when it comes to companies who are getting these benefits. So that is also to be seen on how this particular play is going to develop, right? But for now, this is the case. Meanwhile, as the chip manufacturing is going on and getting imported from China and Taiwan and US and Hong Kong, what's really happening with the Indian chips is Balaji wafers. So General Atlantic is digging into Balaji wafers. The company is getting valued at 35,000 crores, right? 7% stake they are buying at 2,500 crores. So the company is getting valued. Sales at 6,500 crores. So if the sales are at 6,500 crores, essentially the company is getting somewhere around like a 5.5 kind of a multiple, which sounds fair. Net profit of 1,000 crores. So if you're looking at price to earnings, it's just 35, which is pretty cool for a growing fast mover consumer goods company, right? So that's what's happening. Mr. Manish Kondhalkar deletes his messages. From now on, I'm not going to respond to him. Anyway, so that's what's going on, folks. General Atlantic buying into Balaji wafers. So India, meanwhile, while it's not a chip superpower as of now, it's definitely a chip superpower when it comes to like literal chips to be eaten. Production linked incentives. Yes, thank you, Mr. Pandit. I got reminded of it. Uh, More retail. That is the Aditya Birla uh, company, right? Birla Group, essentially, uh, it has a lot to do with that. IPO is going on. 607 crores equity has been funded by Amazon and Samara Capital. So more retail, more chains is gonna go public. Let's see how that features on. Meanwhile, as PhonePe is trying to go public, right? It's come out in the official disclosures that the founders of PhonePe, Mr. Samir Nigam and Mr. Rahul Chari is his name. They've sold apparently about 4,000 crores worth of PhonePe shares in pre-IPO transaction. 4,000 crore rupees. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. So if we talk about PhonePe and the way it's been going on, it's a very interesting business. It's very far from making money, to be honest. However, nobody can deny its significance in the entire ecosystem. Right? PhonePe has a lot going for it. It has triumphed everybody, including Paytm, despite being a slightly different kind of a play, right? Paytm was a wallet business. PhonePe got lucky with the UPI play that it got earlier, right? Wallets basically got phased out, right? So while that happened, stakes worth $430 million were sold. $430 million is about 4,000 crores in this day and age, right? If you want to look at PhonePe's financials, PhonePe reported 3,900 crores for the first 6 months. Its loss widened to 1,444 crores from 1,300 crores earlier. So the losses are rising while the revenue is rising. So, and it's a lot of money, I mean, that they're losing. At a revenue of 3,900 crores, they're losing 1,400 crores as of now, right? While all the everything else, the numbers and all, they're claiming some growth, which is okay. But the net numbers are not very comfortable. So I don't understand how PhonePe uh, is gonna make money, right? I mean, there are a lot of avenues where it can make money if it's able to cross sell successfully, because there's a lot which PhonePe offers in addition to just transactions, right? Bill payments, insurance, and so on and so forth. So it becomes an agent on steroids, but the numbers are tricky. However, Mr. Samir Nagam, is a terrific entrepreneur, and I'm sure something is on cards, although it's not clear. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible for PhonePe to make money, right? It's not like there is a problem with the model itself. and it's never gonna. That's not the reading of the situation. It's just that it's very unclear, and the company is fairly old, and it's pretty far from making money. Although viewers of Thinkers Frequency and the readers of my articles would obviously know that some companies are not just revenue churners, right? Some companies are strategic assets. PhonePe is a strategic asset. PhonePe's valuation is a climb for Walmart's books. So Walmart, as it bought Flipkart for about 16 to 19 billion dollars, it bought 77% for 16 billion, I guess. So 20 billion dollars was what Flipkart was worth, right, when Walmart bought it in 2021, right, about 21. So when that happened, uh, now Flipkart is worth about 40 billion dollars, 38 to 40 billion dollars on their books, and Flipkart is going to go public. As it goes public, Walmart's books will be up like 100% in just 5 7 years, which is great, which is about 12 13% CAGR, return on capital, which is awesome, right? And then apart from Flipkart, PhonePe is also going to be about a $10 billion company, I guess, right? So that is, and as it's been hived off from Flipkart, so it's going to be leading to more money for Walmart books. So even if PhonePe and Flipkart essentially lose money, real cash will be on the books of Walmart, in addition to the paper net worth climb that happens because of their valuation. So uh, FY25, PhonePe did a revenue of 7,100 crores compared to 5,000 crores in FY24, right? And consolidated net loss was 1,700 crores. So that's what's going on, from 1,200 to 1,700 crores. So that is not healthy, of course, but it is what it is, right? Super app as a strategy hasn't worked well. Neither Tata Neu now nor Paytm could make it click, says Mr. Ankur Pandit. That is correct. That is absolutely correct. Super app as a strategy has not clicked. But PhonePe is, can you call it a super app? It's more or less a payment strategy, right? So the beauty is that everything has to be judged from a case to case basis. And PhonePe is more or less a payments app, right? And as their core feature is very high frequency. So payments is extremely high frequency. A payments app by its core users is used, let's say, at least 4 times a day, right? 5 times a day, maybe 6 times a day. A lot of, it's very very high frequency. When it comes to these many high frequency touch points, right, it becomes easier for a company to cross sell, upsell, side sell, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what this company is doing. And I'm not saying that it can be so green that it turns everything around, because the payment business itself is not making money. And I'm saying, not saying that insurance sales, or let's say MDR fee or something of that sort can make up for everything, or bill recharge payments and so on and so forth. It's going to make up for everything, but it has potential to make money. So PhonePe, the jury is still out, I'll say. Although the company is successful in a lot of ways, PhonePe is probably the biggest intrapreneurial success of the world. I mean, I'll say PhonePe is perhaps the biggest entrepreneurial success from the Indian startup ecosystem, because PhonePe was bought by Flipkart, right? It was a fully owned subsidiary of Flipkart. And as that grew, it became so big that Walmart had to actually hive it off and work it out as a separate unit and make it go public. And it's just amazing whatever's happened. Has Walmart invested in PhonePe as well? Asks Mr. Ankur Pandit. Well, as I said, when Walmart acquired Flipkart for about $20 billion, PhonePe was a fully owned subsidiary of Flipkart. So naturally, PhonePe also got acquired by Walmart, right? I hope that clarifies. Let's move on, folks. Very interesting times, right? Very interesting times. IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, has readied 1 lakh crore for 18 gigawatt renewable energy bet. This is very important, right? 18 gigawatt renewable energy. This is capex essentially. As you know, as viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, India needs a lot of capex. We need all the capex we can get. Although it would be nice to get capex outside the power game, because you know, there's going to be more multiplication of money when it comes to capex outside power, outside. So 1 lakh crore is a lot of money. 18 gigawatts when it comes to renewable energy. Indian Oil is, of course, a very big refiner and fuel retailer, right? It'll acquire 12 gigawatt of renewable energy and build 6 gigawatt organically. So this comes around 1 gigawatt costs about some 5,000 crores. That's the cost of 1 gigawatt, and it's gonna be 18 gigawatts, so 1 lakh crore. So that's a lot of money. That's good news for the country. While renewable energy is clicking in, thermal energy is going down. The share of thermal energy has gone down for the first time from 70%. So 72 to 70%, it's going down. It's still very important. Thermal energy is extremely important for the country to provide grid stability. However, you can see how it's getting, let's say, if not phased out. It won't be nice to say that thermal energy is getting phased out, but it's getting supported by renewable energy, right? This is very, very good news for the country. India has made great progress when it comes to renewable energy, right? The targets that we had for 2030, they were conquered in 2025 itself. Speaking of renewable energy, folks, Indian Railways is heavy on renewable energy, right? Indian Railways is trying its best to essentially electrify its entire line, right? So the passenger line is almost pretty much electrified. The freight corridor is basically looking at some electrification. There was some numbers attached to it, which I'm going to come to, which is very, very important when it comes to Indian Railways. Indian Railways is also spending a lot of money. And as you know, railways are very important for India's growth story, because railways essentially bring the cost down of logistics. So logistics is that pillar of any national growth story, that it decides everything, right? The more money you spend on logistics, worse off you are, right? The more money you're having to spend on logistics means that you're getting screwed from all angles, right? If you're spending less money on logistics, it means that your country is becoming more and more effective as it's going forward, right? As it's basically improving itself. And that in that piece of reducing logistics costs, railways are extremely important. Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would obviously remember the cost of per kilometer per metric ton of MT, if it was not metric ton, the cost of that was how much did railways cost? Somewhere around 1.9 rupees, right? Roads costed about 11 rupees, and uh, airways costed about 66 rupees. So more and more investment in railways is going to lead to decrease of logistics cost. Now, logistics as a percentage of GDP, according to Mr. Nitin Gadkari, is about 9%, 8 to 9%. They wanted to come down by 6 to 7%. As the logistics costs come down to 6 to 7%, it's actually gonna add a GDP percentage point, right? Because that's how things quicken up. The multiplication factor of money sort of gets a real boost when more money goes into logistics improvements. So as railways essentially electrifies itself, or electrifies its freight also, you're gonna see a lot of money getting saved, and then which is gonna be great news. Mr. Ankur Pandit writes, in Kerala, solar panel installations have become commonplace to the extent that the electricity board went bankrupt, paying customers for the electricity given back to the grid by them. Oh, this was a very, very important news, and I guess we discussed it in the last week's Thinkers Frequency, right? The customers essentially, so they had to realign themselves. This story, right? The electricity board going belly up to pay customers for all the things that they were for the generate for the electricity that they were giving back to the grid. and now that's basically turning around, and it's to be seen how that plays out. I guess we discussed it in last or last to last episode, but yeah, that's what's happening. Speaking of electrification, folks, there's also an attempt by Delhi government to electrify or retrofit IC engine cars so that they could be they they could be green, and be less pollutive. So they came up with a strategy. Somebody must have come up with a brilliant idea. They said, sir, why don't we think about electrifying, retrofitting electric IC cars, right? Internal combustion engine cars, they're old, they're out of life. Let's retrofit them with uh, electric engines. Now, this is obviously good news for startups who deal with this kind of overhauling, if you can call it that. However, this has led to a lot of safety concerns coming along, and those concerns are basically getting highlighted by the auto companies, because when you're solving for a pollution problem, you do not want a safety problem, and then safety problems will be galore when it comes to retrofitting. Now, what they are doing is analogy thinking. What they say, that hey, we retrofitted petrol engines, or let's say IC engines, with CNG engines, right? With so on and so forth. Like railways is doing hydrogen, why can't we do so? That is analogy thinking. Just because that particular technology worked that way doesn't mean it's going to work in an electric way. This is Electric vehicles are fundamentally different from IC engines, and it's a very nifty idea to essentially retrofit IC engine cars with electric drivetrains. So very, very weird. But let's see what happens. Railways is also a game changer when it comes to reaching Northeast states, and has been a boon for landlocked states. That is true, Mr. Ankur Pandit. You're on fire, and that is correct. Northeast is getting a lot of investments when it comes to railways, and it's a lot of good news, by the way, coming from Northeast. I'll come to that. But speaking of good news, and speaking of East, it seems like the government has essentially taken over or solved the Maoist problem. The Maoist Naxal problem was a huge, huge concern for the country. If you remember, we were dealing with a lot of issues when it came to Maoism, right? Naxalism, and Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh were the biggest belts. Now, what happens is, as I say, all business outcomes are results are outcomes of political will, right? So, when political will doesn't take care of safety issues, right, businesses cannot thrive. Now, Jharkhand is a very mineral rich state, so is Chhattisgarh, and so is Bihar. So East is very, very blessed when it comes to minerals. But nothing can happen if fundamental issues of safety and security are not guaranteed. And that was the case for a very, very long time when it comes to the Naxal movement. They were essentially, blocking everything. The government is down to its last particular district, which is called Singh Bomb district, which is Jharkhand's west Singh Bomb district. That's the only district where the Naxalism is still intact. The bounties which a lot of people had, they've been shunted out, and they're basically hunted, which is, I don't know how to take it. It's, you know, uh, there's a lot of romance that has been attached with Naxalism, right, in Indian pop culture, which makes it not terrorism. So you can't say terrorism and Naxalism in the same light. Although they are also violent, their moves are also anti-establishment. They're not essentially pro-nation forces, right? So they can be called as terrorists. However, they're being hunted out, and as they go out, a new era of infrastructure development will be visible in those states as well, which is great news, which is extraordinary news. So let's move forward, folks. We've been talking a lot about it. Defense pact ready. Europe eyes Indian arms. Europeans are going to be looking at Indian arms. India, by the way, is also going forward with a 118 Rafale deal, which is huge, which is extraordinary, which is great for the size. So there's a very big comment by Mr. Ankur Pandit. There is a company near Pune that does this conversion, IC electric already. But in my view, this has to be a policy level change. Moreover, even when electric cars that are changed via thermal generated electricity, it is not ecologically greener than a PUC compliant IC vehicle. So Mr. Ankur Pandit says, now he's right. So a lot of startups are coming out, the IC to electric conversions, and that's good news, right? That's entrepreneurial activity. All more power to them. But this has to be a policy level change, which is what it is. The government is essentially looking at making it a policy level discussion, and they want this to happen in Delhi to combat pollution. And now the last point, even when electric cars that are charged via thermal generated electricity, it is not ecologically greener than a PUC compliant IC vehicle. Are you sure of that, Mr. Ankur Pandit? That was a very mainstream argument against electric vehicles, that even if you've made an electric car, how can you say that it's clean? Because the grid is still, coming from less green sources, right? That's the view. Now, if that is your view, how do you, first of all, account for the continuous improvement in a grid that's going on, firstly, right? Because as we discussed in a few earlier stories, we were going heavy when it comes to renewable energy, and that's happening. So you agree with that. So, number one, the grid gets better, the car doesn't get better, right? So, even if, let's say, 10 years ago, an electric vehicle getting its energy from a coal grid, let's say coal based power plant, right, was not as green. The grid since then has come so far along that it's greener. The car is definitely greener. And secondly, how do you account for the cafe norms calculations? So according to the cafe norms, right, which are responsible for calculating carbon emissions for car companies, they are doing the math, and they're finding out that electric vehicles are bringing down carbon emissions, even though the grid they're coming out with is. So there's a lot of counter view. Uh, in one way, you're absolutely right, right? A PUC compliant IC vehicle is pretty clean, it has what it has. However, that is only a static analysis of the situation. The dynamic analysis of the situation is that both in terms of cost and in terms of emissions and in terms of uh, ecologically greening, right? Uh, it is dynamically in favor of an electric vehicle. So as the grid gets better, right now it might be a bad idea, but 2 years down the line you're going to find out, or 3 years down the line you're going to find out that an EV is definitely doing better. So I hope that Mr. Ankur Pandit writes 100%. I guess he agrees with some part of the analysis, but this is great. This was awesome. I agree. So in one of the books, Scott Adams sir had written that it doesn't make sense for me to adhere to a social norm which is totally wrong. He said that I live in California and it doesn't make sense for me to not have solar installations over my roof, because if I do that, I totally become an untouchable in California, right? However, if I don't buy solar right now, right, and I buy solar 2 years later, it's going to be 50% cheaper for me. So just by delaying that expense, I could save 50% of money and buy a better technology. And I'm going to be stuck with something bad, right, which is not going to be greener in absolute terms, in capital terms, and so on and so forth. And just by delaying my expense, I could be doing a better job. But why can't I do that? Because the society will start judging me and so on and so forth. So he was right, and you were right as well. It's just that the dynamic analysis says that someday you're gonna have to make that comparison apple to apple, right? I hope that was a good discussion. We were talking about defense packs. India is gonna buy a major Rafale shipment, right? 118 maritime security, counterterrorism, cyber defense, also part of deal when it comes to EU. India is also going to be supplying a lot of defense material. Uh, I will recheck basis the grid improvement you talk about. Perfect. And that we'll have a good discussion, I'm sure. Says Mr. Ankur Pandit. Right? And India is still not making great progress when it comes to drone manufacturing or drone. There is no policy level, policy willingness that is being shown, which is a trouble, which is a lot of trouble. I have written extensively on how fighter jets are past, right? Fighter jets are are an ancient technology now, and it's just putting people in a cockpit where they can die. And it just makes sense to invest, go very, very heavy on drones. Just forget about fighter planes. But India is not really moving in that direction. Maybe a way to look at that, maybe that India is not ready. Since most of our chips are coming from China, Vietnam, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. Maybe we don't have that intelligence, right? Although it's gonna be a lost cause. That's what I mean. Let's move on, folks. Not gonna discuss politics, of course. Great discussions happening today. Realtors seek budget fix to spur housing market. Realtors are not happy with the housing market and how it's sort of, the major problem when it comes to the housing market is the mid market, the affordable housing, right? Affordable housing essentially is becoming a problem, right? And it's not growing, it's static, there's a lot of problems. It shows that a lot of money that we are basically making, it rests at the top of the barrel, right? At the top of the pyramid. And if affordable housing is not clicking in, it means problems, right? They have a different perspective. They say that affordable housing is not clicking in because the norms of affordable housing are essentially outdated. They say that affordable housing in metros is about 60 square meters, 60 square yards, and it has a price cap of 45 lakh. And they say that this price cap is incompatible with what's happening in the world and the country right now. So they say it's not a cost issue, or it's not that the market issue, it's basically an evaluation issue. How do you look at that, folks? Do you think it's a good argument? Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. They say the Confederation of Real Estate Developers recommended measures aim to ease structural issues in affordability, right? According to the developers body with 13,000 members, housing remains a critical engine to keep pace with India's rapid urbanization. It's vital to strengthen affordable housing norms unchanged since 2017, right? Which I told you 45 lakh no longer reflect current costs. Multiple definitions also add to confusion. Developers have recommended raising cap to 969 square yards, that's 90 square feet, that's 90 square yards effectively, and making the price go up. Affordability pressures today are as much about access to credit as they are about prices. Updating housing norms and loan incentives would help further boost user demand, especially in the sub 1 crore segment. So we talked about it in one of our uh, uh, thinkers frequency discussion. We talked about how pri- housing below 1 crore was not kicking in, right? It was not kicking in, and there are a lot of credit issues, financing issues, and so on and so forth. But ultra premium segment, the luxury premium, ultra premium segment is pretty much on fire, right? Now, that particular market, how do you solve for that market is the question. Do you make it easy to buy? Do you make some sort of incentives for developers? Do you make it easy financing, easy to finance houses and so on and so forth, right? Overall, residential sales have dropped 11% across top cities in 2025. 11% is a big drop. What do you do to solve for it is a question which everybody will have to answer. The second question, which is a second order question, is it good that we are going away from top cities, right? If we go to housing, and if we go from away from top 7 cities or 8 cities, away from the metropolitans, does it make sense, right? Because we're going to avoid the Malthusian trap. It's going to be a better quality of life. It's going to be better affordability, less congestion in the capital cities, and so on and so forth. So these are the conversations which people are having, right? So some of the numbers. A 2 lakh home loan interest deduction cap, according to experts, is outdated, right? Buyers now pay 4 to 6 lakh annually in interest. So the deductions need to be improved. Low income informal workers often lack documentation, limiting access to formal home loans and pushing them to high cost lenders, right? Home improvement loans, 80 to 90% of property value to de-risk lenders, expand credits at the bottom of the barrel. So that's what these people are looking at, which makes sense, right? Meanwhile, DLF has posted 14% rise in Q3, profit at 1200 crores. So DLF, having hedged the entire property cycle by going heavy on ultra premium segment, is doing really well, right? So that is the way to look at the industry. Just because the industry is falling from a macro level doesn't mean that you are also gonna lose out. Sometimes the answer is premiumization. Now we've talked about premiumization. Housing as an industry, real estate as an industry has been really benefiting from premiumization. Can you recall another industry which is doing well because of premiumization, even though the entire industry is falling down? We've talked about this. We've talked about this. What is the other industry that is going down, but it's doing well because of premiumization? That is a question for the viewers of Thinkers Frequency. Let me pour my drink. Let me take a sip. I hope you're doing well with the sips, folks. The simultaneous sips, right? You get the question. I'm pouring the drink. It's still hot. Mr. Ankur Pandit writes, real estate is a bubble that becomes a reality when buyers agree to pay. A flat that is sold for 5 crore in Mumbai is sold for only 1 crore in Lucknow. Cost of making these flats differ by less than 10%, while the landing acquisition cost incurred might be higher. It still cannot be a 5x higher cost. No, Mr. Ankur Pandit, you're wrong about that. Sorry about that. Definitely, the land acquisition cost changes everything. Lucknow and Mumbai, if you look at the land rates per square feet, it's just unbelievable. 5x is probably even not gonna cover it, right? In realistically. Alcohol, says Mr. Tushar Tiwari. You're right, Mr. Tiwari. Alcohol is the industry. If you look at globally, if you look at it in in the country, alcohol as an industry is going off the cliff, right? However, most companies are being able to survive, the Carlsbergs of the world, and all of those companies, by the way, because of premiumization, right? That's what they're hoping for. That's their prayer. Let's move on, folks. I hope you're having fun with the sips. That's what makes life worth it, right? Sipping your drink with friends. Now, I'm sipping hot water. You can be sipping, coffee, tea. Some of you could be sipping wine. Early morning, although, that would be funny. Some people could be going heavy. They could be going whiskey, gin, rum. I don't know what people drink. I'm a teetotaler, a straight edge, but you could be sipping anything. But the beauty lies in the simultaneity of it, right? The synchronicity. That's what makes it beautiful. Let's move on, folks. We've talked enough about Adani Energy, Adani Total Gas. We've talked about their numbers, right? Adani Energy, 8% drop in profits, but revenue is up. Adani Total Gas, 11% rise in profit, revenue up. By the way, I am almost done with the Excel sheet. So I've listed a few things that I believe are good for value. So we're going to be tracking, right? The tracker, we want to 5x our money, right? That's an intellectual exercise in 1 year. So it's very important that we track ourselves, as Mr. Tushar Tiwari said. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an Excel sheet. and you can all comment on it. You can all see that sheet. I'm going to list out all the things that I believe have real potential to deliver some value. I've talked a lot about them. I think railway stocks have the potential. I've said defense. I've said some plastics, the Shelly thing. I've talked about something to do with Satcom, so I could find Nelco and other companies. I have talked about Aether. Well, that stock has already doubled, more than doubled. We've talked about avoiding IT, which turned out to be a good proposition, right? IT didn't hold well. We've talked about banks that could be going up, right, after a while, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to put it in an Excel sheet, and it'll be in the comments of these Thinker Frequency episodes, or in the future be in the description of them. So you can just check the sheet, write comments, maybe make some changes, and so on and so forth, right? Let's move on, folks. Unspent funds totaling 75,000 crore may make up for additional subsidy outgo. This is a very bad news for the country, folks, if you can realize it. If we are basically, if you're looking at India and Indian government spends, and if you're not spending money on capex, right, there's a lot of unspent fund that is 75,000 crores, right? And that is basically, that unspent fund is looking as a good news, so that our 4.4 fiscal deficit is maintained. That is bad news, right? Because that fund, that unspent fund, right, if it would have gone in the right place, that would have multiplied the money. Subsidy is not really multiplication of money to that extent, right? So that is what's happening. 75,000 crore fund. Ministry of Jal Shakti spent only 9% of its allocation, budget allocation, right? Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation spent only 2%. That's totally fucked. Ministry of Corporate Affairs 4%, and so on and so forth. It is not good news, but it's good news from a macro perspective, because India is going to maintain its fiscal deficit as the subsidy outgo increases, right? So 75,000 crores saved, and going, so that's what's happening. Meanwhile, the government subsidy allocation may continue to overshoot the budget target, with the first batch of supplementary demand for grants involving a cash outgo of 41,000 crores towards higher fertilizers and so on and so forth. Now, for subsidies, of course, all are not equal. Some subsidies are very necessary to maintain business competitiveness, right? And of course, a lot of important things like fertilizers, we need to subsidize that particular aspect of industry, right? Agriculture, it contributes a lot, and it's very important. But again, it's not good news that we're not spending the allocated budget on, let's say, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. Mr. Ankur Pandit writes, alcohol is no longer seen as an essential social binder, especially by Gen Zs. Yeah, they're all getting high on, marijuana. Yeah, that's obviously better for them, right? So that's going on. Let's move on, folks. Niti Aayog seeks extra SOPs under PLI for makers of recycled batteries. That's good news. Power transmission network crosses 5 lakh circuit kilometers with transmission lines of 224 kilovolt and above, right? So this is obviously Indian power segment. It first come the generators, then there are transmitters, and so on and so forth. In every way, we are going. It is in line with what we are trying to do with the Vikasit Bharat thing, right? Nuclear energy, obviously the Shanti bill is going to come out in a few months. That's also very, very important. Let's move on, folks. We've talked a lot about these things, so we're not going to go heavy. We've talked about silver. We've talked about steel makers face a margin squeeze. Coming quarters have a safeguard, right? Non-ferrous producers likely to bring in better Q3 on price rebound. steel companies hit by lower prices and rising costs. As you know, the government has been trying to save the steel industry from a lot of imports, a lot of duties, basically import protection, anti-dumping duties, and so on and so forth. Yet the margin squeeze is real, and things might just get better in the next few quarters. Although it's not really a great buy, I'll say. So I'm not really excited about the sector, but let's see. Let's move on, folks. Banks want RBI to inject 3 to 5 lakh crore via open market operations transactions, right? At the moment, banking is going through a liquidity crisis, as I told you about. It's not really a crisis, but it is something, right? So that's what's going on. Banks want 3 to 5 lakh crore. At the moment, banking system liquidity in Jan so far, daily average surplus of over 59,000 crores. This surplus should be at around 2.5 lakh crores, right? So that's what's happening. CRR ratio has been reduced by 100 BPA. CRR has been reduced by 100 bips. That's 1 percentage point. 3% infused 2.5 lakh crores by December 2025. So open market transactions, they are going to be looking at about 5.2 lakh crores, right? So that's going to be durable liquidity for the system. Very important. We've talked a lot about this. Mr. Ankur Pandit writes, in a way, this is not bad news. If the ministries that didn't make a convincing case for their spending, they weren't extended the budget. Reminds me of my brand manager days. Well, would you say that? No, but it's about their allocation, which they had already planned. How's that a good news? That those people are not being able to spend the money that they were allocated, that it was planned and allocated and they couldn't do it. How is that a good news? Right? It's not as if they figured out later. It's just that they couldn't spend. They were, because of regulatory bottlenecks, because of a lot of problems, some implementation issues, execution issues, they couldn't do it. That couldn't be good news. The brand manager thing, yeah, right? Convincing case for spending money, that doesn't apply here because that's a part of the budget play, right? It's not, it's, so when it comes to governments and at that scale, right, when they're allocating money, the planning is done beforehand and then comes the execution. And that is particularly the difference between you and your brand manager projects and how the government essentially looks at this. Gen Z uses gaming as a social binder. Well, that's well said. Let's move on, folks. We've talked a lot about credit flowing into commercial sector, right? Fundraising through commercial papers fell 1.2%. Hardening yields prompt companies to go to short-term bank loans, right? The companies are going back to banks. Commercial papers fell by 1.2%. That's not a lot of money. I mean, that's not statistically significant, at least for the time being. Let's move on, folks. Renew got a $600 million bond, right? Gift City. Hyderabad raises 2,500 crores, 2,100 crores to debt. One interesting case, folks. Lawyers, speaking of legal matters, High Court has granted interim stay on a 57 crore GST demand from donut company. Donut company is like mad over donuts, guys. So they used to sell something over the counter, right? Some products over the counter. Now that basically attracted some GST, right? But for the restaurant play, they were supposed to get like an 18% GST. But they had like a 5% GST, basically the whole GST. Should an over-the-counter purchase made in a restaurant be taxed as per restaurant GST norms, or would it be an over-the-counter purchase to be treated as an FMCG sale? That is the question. And for that, the High Court has essentially granted that stay on the GST demand. So this is an interesting case. Just a good food for thought, brain exercise. How would you tax it? Is it an over-the-counter purchase? So would it be FMCG, or would it be an actual restaurant kind of a thing? So that is very complicated. Let's see how that particular thing plays out. For now, lawyers will make money, right? Let's move on, folks. Let's move on. India's chip ambitions set to take wing. Micron's Guj plant coming on stream next month. That's what Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav is saying. He went viral recently for responding to a comment which said India is a second tier AI player. He said no, we are adding value to every layer. So he said there's an application layer, there's this infrastructure layer, then there's chip layer, and so on and so forth. And we are going every way. Stanford has said we are third, and so on and so forth. And he's right that ROI is very important. So you can make all you want, but if it's not having business impact predictably, it wouldn't be a good idea. So let's see how we are able to generate ROI, right, when it comes to application layer. Clarification: allocation is basis a broad plan, but actual dispersal might require more details of spending and associated benefits. In absence of such details, maybe the funds weren't disbursed. Good debate. This is a good debate. I'll still say broad plan, not really. This is not a broad plan. When it comes to departments, right, this is a very deep bottom-up exercise. It's not like, we have this much money, let's give 10% to somebody, let's give 20%. No, no, no. This is not a broad plan. That's gonna be an incorrect characterization when we are talking about government allocation of money. Spending is, let's say you wanted to build something, but you couldn't get an approval for a piece of land or something of that. So you were supposed to make a highway, but land acquisition didn't happen. So that spend got stuck. That is how it's happening. This is once again a discussion on something we discussed earlier. Let's move on, folks. Humanoid robots a must for Musk by next year. Tesla CEO expects Europe, China to approve full self-driving systems soon. Humanoid robots is the fulcrum, is the story on which the entire AI narrative stands. If AI narrative is to be believed, humanoid robots will have to pick up, self-driving cars will have to pick up. Otherwise, the whole AI thing will be like dead-ass disco. Speaking of AI, folks, OpenAI is knocking on the Gulf door to get $50 billion infusion. OpenAI is also looking at going public at a $500 billion valuation. So let's see what happens. Let's move on, folks. We talked about China. We've talked about DLI being equity linked. We've talked about IPOs, PhonePe, emphasis, Q3 profit up despite the labor code hit. Let's move on. New drugs could hit the market soon. Right? Government reduces timeline to review applications for drug trials by half. The only intimation needed. The government is dealing a lot with the pharmaceutical companies. So if you've been reading, the pharmaceutical companies made requests to the government saying that their norms for better GMP compliant manufacturing practices, right? They will have to rest a bit and so on and so forth. So the government was dealing with those. And the government is also dealing with faster approvals, right? As a mission to come out with new drugs. That is basically what's going on. Earlier timeline, 90 working days, changed to 45 working days. The rules may be called the New Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules of 2026. So this is much needed, much needed. India is not really a par when it comes to clinical trials and related activities, right? But we have a lot of potential. So let's see how that goes. Let's move on, folks. By the way, Sun Pharma is going for a $10 billion takeover of Oregnon. It has a lot of debt. The revenue is at 6.5 billion. This is going to be an inclusive debt. So Sun Pharma is a huge company. It's a $45 billion company, India's largest, right? Amongst India's largest pharmaceutical companies, the generic play. It's going to be buying Oregnon for $10 billion. It's going to change everything. It's going to be a cataclysmic play, right, for Indian pharma. So let's see how that particular thing plays out. Let's move on, folks. Gulf After reality, Gulf NRIs eyeing a share of India's alternate investment funds pie. 40% share capital that Indian fund managers are looking to target from the Gulf. Well, that's no surprise at all. Let's move on, folks. Regional airline Fly 91 is aiming for operating break even in the next financial year. Net loss of 67 crores. Next is going to be operational profitability. Let's move on, folks. Oscars have listed, it's going to be an event, of course, in March, right? Uh, when is it going to be exactly? uh, March 15. So that's going to be Best Pictures has 11 nominations. One Battle After Another, which was a piece of shit in my opinion, that is nominated. Then there's Sinners. I've heard a lot of good things about Sinners. Marty Supreme, Train Dreams, Frankenstein, Bugonia, and so on. I've not watched a lot of movies, by the way. I've lost faith in the Oscars, right? Now it's more about diversity, equity, inclusion, right? That's screwed up everything when it comes to movies. I hated a lot of good movies that said that they were good movies. So I'm giving Oscars some time. I'm letting things age before experiencing them. But excited about this. Mr. Ankur Pandit also wrote, "What's your view on Dhurandhar box office 2? Dhurandhar 2 prediction. My God, that's a tough sell, right? I think it should go above 2,000 crores, right? It's just incredible, incredible. Uh, OpenAI has also opened up to ads, says Mr. Ankur Pandit. That is correct. That is correct. OpenAI is the linchpin. As Dr. Burry said, OpenAI is the linchpin. With OpenAI, everything might just get screwed. That company has problems. That company has a lot of problems. You know what he said, Mr. Musk? I've lost a lot of battles, but I've not lost a war. And he's considering OpenAI as a war thing. So let's see. By the way, OpenAI has some good news. Miss Meera Maruti, she was running a competitor company to OpenAI, and she had raised a lot of money. And all those people have gone back to OpenAI. So, uh, you know, that's happening. Let's move on, folks. We're done for today. At least, I mean, I've tried. So I'm just gonna take a look. Till then, if you have questions, we can put them on. I've tried being very holistic or exhaustive, comprehensive with everything. I hope I'm not missing out on anything. I'll just take a look, quick look, right? What's your take on BRICS looking to create an alternative currency to the dollar, which is backed by respective gold deposits? That's not gonna happen. So BRICS said that they're not going forward with it, and when it comes to giving dollar a challenge, it's always been war that has been the case. Libyan guy, Mr. Gaddafi, right? He wanted to have an African dinar gold based currency because he had a lot of things. So you know what happened to Gaddafi. Venezuelan guy, this person, uh, Maduro, he also was looking at petrodollar, ditching the dollar, and he was basically selling his oil reserves in respective currencies, right? China and every place else, basically hurting US control on the dollar and dollar dominance. That happened. BRICS wanted to do its currency thing, but then Donald Trump came, attacking all the companies in this countries, and this he said that the results gonna be very sad. So BRICS sort of backed out, and they said we're not gonna do it. So a lot of people are gonna try and have their own transactions in their own currencies or swaps or something of that sort. But that has usually been a very bad news, right? And it's the same thing with BRICS. So not really happening is my view. By the way, speaking of dollar, the dollar index went down 98. When it comes to 98, that means you know it's not heavy. The dollar is getting weakened. Even though dollar got weakened, rupee got weakened further against the dollar. So we had like a 91.7 or 91.9 kind of a thing, which is not good. So rupee is basically continuing its descent at the rate of 5% per year when it comes to going against dollar, despite dollar getting weakened so much, right? So that's something that we've got to be careful with. Let's see how that plays out. So let's move on. Retailers restaurant reports weak sales in December quarter, lost in pollution. Speaking of pollution, Delhi just got rains. I can feel some rains happening. Let's see how that plays out. Ford is returning to the F1 play, right, which is very historically relevant. Ford has created perhaps the most legendary engine when it comes to F1, right? Ford, the company's origins are related to racing, right? So if you know, the Ford started in 1903 partly because of racing. Henry Ford had won an event 2 years earlier in his sweepstake car, and the prize money was used to found the Ford company. After 20 years, 22 years of rest, Ford is coming back in the game, which is interesting. Let's see how that pans out. Uh, let's move on. Yeah, we've talked a lot about AI and so on and so forth. 5,000 crore rupee push for SIDB. SIDB is very important for MSME, easier credit. That's going to get, cabinet has approved a 5,000 crore equity push. That's going to be very important. Let's move on, folks. I just don't want to miss out on anything, right? Privacy cryptos. The regulator is cracking on privacy cryptos. No place for cryptos that intentionally hide origin and so on and so forth. Financial Intelligence Unit has told crypto exchanges to stop dealing with anonymity enhancing cryptos. Well, that's no surprise, but it's significant. Let's move on, folks. We've talked a lot about companies' financials. FPIs are still selling, right? Indian equities. FMCG has been sold a lot. Financial services, IT are next. I have told you to avoid IT. That has turned out to be a great news from 6 months. I mean, if you've been invested in IT, you would have lost a lot of money for the last 6 months, ever since we started Thinkers Frequency. So, good news, right? Good news. Let's move on, folks. Reliance, by the way, has said that it's the second largest player when it comes to quick commerce. A lot of it is food and all, FMCG play. So they are saying, Blinkit has said it's broken even at an adjusted EBITDA level, whatever that means. But Blinkit essentially has, reinstated its position. So just when Reliance came out with its numbers, Blinkit said that it's doing what it's doing. Speaking of Blinkit, Mr. Dipender Goyal has moved on from the CEO's role. He's going to be an executive, like a vice chairman kind of a position, which is essentially transitioning out of the day-to-day operations role, which is pretty significant if you think about it. So it's not like an Albinder Dhinsa, he's called as Albi by Mr. Dipender Goyal. Mr. Dhinsa is going to be leading the Eternal Group day-to-day operations, right? This is also significant because most of what's coming to Eternal is through quick commerce. Food delivery has pretty much saturated, right? It's not growing at all. Most of its growth is coming from quick commerce, and as that happens, it's going to be very interesting how that plays out, because the battle has not been won yet, right? It's not like things are settled and so on and so forth. There's a lot of action happening. Amazon, Flipkart, Reliance, Big Basket, Swiggy, with its Instamart, and then of course Zepto. A lot of players are moving forward in their game. Blinkit is of course at the pole position for now, but it's to be seen what happens as the other players start spending money. Let's move on, folks. And this is still a race to the bottom. Nobody's really making money, right? Blinkit is still, as other people started spending, they've reduced their delivery executive costs for customers. So it's just a money pit. But let's see what happens. Japanese bond yields have been rising. We've been talking about that for a very long time. Japanese central bank is set to keep borrowing costs steady, That's and as the yen trade, the yen swap unwinds, it's gonna hurt Indian markets as well. Just after results and CEO change for Eternal, stock just gave up all the gains for the last few days. Oh, I've not been following Eternal share price. Let me take a look. Eternal share price. That's Mr. Tiwari speaking. 6% down 5 days. 1%, 5% 1 month, 6 months 10%, 1 year 22% up. So 1 year 20% up. That's not great growth, but it is surviving. Mr. Goyal is going all temple. Mr. Goyal is all going all temple, says Mr. Ankur Pandit. Ford used to be a WRC regular as well. Don't know how they are placed there. Well, I'll have to read about that. Let's move on, folks. New labor code. I've talked about how it affected IT, BFSI, and of course, Indigo. Right? India likely to grow at 6.5 to 7% in FY27 amid global risks. Well, everybody is updating India's growth prospects. The goal is 8%, right? The goal is 8%. Let's see what happens. Tillman has invested 60,000 crore in a Maharashtra data center. 60,000 crores. Maharashtra is also getting money. So Andhra Pradesh is getting a lot of money, right? When it comes to data center, then it's Telangana and then Maharashtra. So a lot of money going there. Let's move on, folks. Yeah. The co-founder of Carlyle says India has a younger population, could be the dominant economy of the world. He says India's economy could be #1 economy. If not in my lifetime, your lifetime is definitely. He's 76. Let's see how that plays out. The biggest economy, right? That's going to be huge. That's going to be amazing. Yeah, so we're pretty sorted. We're going to take, how long has it been? It's 9:47. Let's give us 5 more minutes, right? So I just don't want to miss out something since we are here and we are doing such hard work. We should be inclusive, right? We should be exhaustive. So let's take a look at the earlier thing. We've talked about, I hope you're enjoying, by the way, the weekly sessions. I hope it's fun. I hope they're adding value. They're definitely keeping me engaged with all the reading. So they're definitely valuable for me. And I try to be very, very succinct with everything. I don't know how it's going to click with people. I don't care. But I hope whoever is joining is drawing a lot of value because this is valuable, right? This is going to give us a very good ground when it comes to investing decisions if we like to invest, or just as an intellectual exercise. It's pretty solid. Let's move on, folks. We've talked about this. Surya hospitals have gotten bought by Novo unit, 49%, right? A lot of action happening when it comes to hospitals and, buying out. A lot of private equity deals happening with there. ITC hotels net rises 9%. On average, room prices going up and higher occupancy. Let's move on, folks. India wants to be $100 billion textile market. We've talked a lot about that. But roadmap in works, right? Coal market going up. Yeah, we are pretty good here. What's your take on the steps taken by the government to stop the LGD segment? LGD, what was that? LGD segment. I'll have to take a look at that. Loss given default. Okay, lender losses, recovery rate, typically calculated as I recovery rate. Okay, economic and regulatory capital, values generating 0% to 100%. I'm not sure if I'm following this particular news, Mr. Ankur Pandit. You said, what's your take on steps taken by the government to stop the LGD segment. Okay, and parallelly, De Beers betting big on Indian market, opening its biggest global store in India. Oh yeah, that is happening definitely. So India is basically looking at coming into the upper middle class or some sort of a middle class economy. Right now we are at 2,500, $2,800 per capita income. They say we're gonna be hitting to $4,000 by 2030, right? $4,000, which is by the way exactly what I had predicted. Bain report had come out in 2022. They said by 2030 we're gonna be a $500 per capita income play. I said that was bullshit. These people are out of their asses. I had said a realistic estimate would be about 4,500, and that's exactly where we're going to land. Current growth rates, notwithstanding. So it's basically 4,200, 300. That's what we're going to look at. As that happens, right? It's going to be very important for all the consumer companies, especially, right, to take a look at India, right? Because a country's per capita income, when it goes above $5,000, right, about $5,600, that's when discretionary spend like skyrockets. And as discretionary rents spend skyrockets, it leads to a second order effects of more companies starting up, more companies making money, more hiring, and then it doesn't grow linearly. It becomes a super linear growth curve, and that's exactly what India is hoping to be around 2035 or something of that sort. So let's move on. A lot of action around AI. A company, Emergent, 7-month-old company, they had raised like $100 million, 900 crores, right? Khosla Ventures, SoftBank. SoftBank comes with big money. All we need is that money to come to me. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what should happen, right? Oh, lab grown diamond. Oh, okay. I saw you talking about the loss given default thing when it comes to banking and so on. It was lab grown diamond. So government has essentially talked about calling diamonds as diamonds. So lab grown diamonds will not be called diamonds. That is what the government is trying to do to save the diamond industry. The reason why that is happening is diamonds are a $10 billion export product for India, and they hire a lot of people. So Surat is the world's biggest diamond polishing play, and if lab grown diamonds essentially screw the diamond industry altogether, which they will, right? It'll become very difficult for India to survive, because $10 billion direct hit, it's gonna lead to like a big loss, right? Second order effects of that are gonna wreck economies. So that's why the government is essentially leading to trying out all sorts of things, right? From not naming lab grown diamonds as diamonds. So they're going for a title thing, right? That it's not diamond. By the way, colored diamonds are still picking up, right? So while white diamonds have lost sheen because of whatever is happening, the colored stones, they are not really getting hurt, right? Let's move on, folks. E-commerce players set to see 20 to 20% uptick during Republic Day sales. That's okay. There's a lot happening with the whole Reliance Rosneft kind of a thing because of US sanctions on Russian oil. Share of thermal electricity to go under 70% in FY27. I told you. So I've been very careful to not miss out very important things. And lenders may bank more on bonds in Q4. Well, that's obvious. Wipro slid 8%, HCL a lot. Everybody, they slid by a lot. Weak affordable market on housing sales. I've told you about that, right? The numbers are grim, very grim. So sub 1 crore percent has gone down from 47% to 34% in sales. 47 to 37 when it comes to affordable housing. They are not selling a lot. So if you want to know the share of others, less than 50 lakhs is 9%, above 1 crore is 63%. You know, we've talked a lot about that. Let's move on, folks. A lot of political chit chat, which we'll not discuss. IMF sees 7.3 growth rate for India. That's good news, right? So, it seems like we've done it, folks. We've done it. We have done it. We've completed everything, right? Rest is all BS. Beautiful. This brings us to the end of 204th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our weekly dose of insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis, our uh, weekly mental workout. Yeah, it is a weekly mental workout. It was awesome. I hope you had fun. I hope you liked the discussion between me, Mr. Ankur Pandit, and Mr. Tushar Tiwari. Everybody else who joined, I hope you had fun. This was amazing. This is always amazing. This is a great mental workout. For like about 1.5 hours, we are discussing so many things and in such depth. It's just amazing, and I'm so happy that I'm being able to do this with you. Thank you so much. Some comments. The irony is that India has the potential to be a big producer of lab grown diamonds as well. Lab grown diamonds is nobody else's domain, right? It can become taken over by anybody, you're right. Unlike golds, diamonds are priced pretty artificially. This shows up in resale pricing, which is atrocious for diamonds. You're 100% right. You're 100% right, Mr. Ankur Pandit. But we need the diamonds industry to survive so that the country survives, right? Uh, Mr. William Davis asks, how's your routine now that TF is not regular? By not regular, you mean not daily. Well, that's a very good question. The routine is not that great actually. So I was thinking if Thinker's Frequency goes out, I'll get some time to work out and so on and so forth. It doesn't happen, right? Like I was right. The routine was the reward essentially, right? So the heavy routine of waking up at 5:30, reading, right, for 1.5 hours, and then delivering a session, and then going to work. That routine was the reward. And while I thought that this whole 3.5 hour thing is gonna be freeing up a lot of my time and going to be more productive, that has not been the case. That has not been the case, which makes me think, should I come back to it? Right? But no, actually, the thing is, there's so much of work that's going on when it comes to my startup. We're gonna be going public. Not, I mean, IPO, hopefully that soon. But we're gonna be announcing what we are doing, right? Until now, it's stealth. So a lot of work is there. We've got a client. We're almost profitable. So that's what's happening. But yeah, the routine was the reward when it came to Thinker's Frequency. That beautiful, tough routine. It was very, very tough. It was very hard, and it was not rewarding in the sense that it didn't bring me anything, right? But the routine itself was extremely rewarding, and that I miss. That I definitely miss. So yeah, but this is what it is, right? Uh, we've come to the end of the show, folks. It was lovely talking. It's 10 a.m. almost, right? I wish you a beautiful day and week, personally and professionally. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow, I'm sorry. I hope to see you next Friday, same place, same time. Please take care. Have a beautiful day. Bye bye.